You are currently inhabiting a state of neurological stagnation, and it is the primary reason your attempts at ascending the axis feel like swimming through deep, freezing mud. You believe that your lack of progress is a result of external factors, lack of capital, lack of opportunity, or the unfairness of the current economic reset. This is a terminal civilizational hallucination. In the raw, unyielding arena of the persistence hunt, the greatest barrier to your expansion is not the gatekeeper at the top, but the hierarchical inertia generated by your own biological substrate. You are currently fighting the system, while your own nervous system is busy garrisoning your mediocrity. We are now bisecting the physics of the social cage, showing you why trying harder is a slave protocol, and how the apex predator utilizes hormonal calibration to move from the frequency of the bottom feeder to the frequency of the sovereign lord. The human brain is an evolutionary organ optimized for metabolic efficiency, not for greatness. For millions of years, survival meant staying within the predictable boundaries of the known tribe. Moving up the hierarchy was not just a social risk, it was a caloric catastrophe. To challenge the existing order required an enormous expenditure of energy, focused aggression, and the risk of total biological liquidation. Consequently, your brain has developed a set of inertia circuits designed to keep you safe in your current coordinate. This is biological gravity. Every time you attempt a sovereign strike, every time you try to launch a new empire or exit the 9-to-5 matrix, these circuits activate a sympathetic alarm. You feel anxiety, imposter syndrome, and procrastination. These are not psychological flaws. They are metabolic brake pads. Your brain is literally trying to save you from the perceived danger of becoming more than you currently are. Consider the pathology of the serotonin status loop. In any hierarchical structure, your position is broadcast through your neurochemistry. The organism at the bottom of the pyramid is flooded with cortisol, the hormone of chronic stress and prey awareness. This state of high-frequency anxiety keeps the individual focused on short-term survival, making long-term strategic planning neurologically impossible. Meanwhile, the organism at the apex is saturated with serotonin and testosterone, which provides the strategic stillness and territorial confidence required to command the environment. Hierarchical inertia is the process by which your current low-status chemistry prevents you from ever reaching the state required for high-status action. You are waiting to feel like a king before you act like one, but the biology works in reverse. You must annex the chemistry before the territory ever yields. You are currently waiting for permission from your own hormones, and the matrix is preparing to audit your submission. We must now analyze the biology of social drag. In the persistence hunt, an organism is defined by its proximity cluster. The crabs in a bucket phenomenon is not just a metaphor, it is a clinical reality of network entropy. Every individual in your current frequency acts as a biological anchor. When you attempt to rise, you create a status deficit in those around you. Their own inertia circuits interpret your growth as a direct threat to their survival. This triggers a subconscious sabotage protocol. They will offer practical advice that is actually strategic friction. They will remind you of your past failures. They will broadcast doubt into your informational field. This is evolutionary policing. The swarm wants you to stay in the center of the herd because your ascension exposes their stagnation. The sovereign architect understands that to break the inertia, he must first perform a total social liquidation. He understands that proximity is destiny. The architecture of hierarchical inertia is reinforced by the comfort feedback loop of the 2026 digital landscape. The matrix has provided you with synthetic status, likes, followers, and digital validation to satisfy your primal drive for dominance without you ever having to annex real territory. This is neurological pacification. You feel like you are winning because your screen tells you so, while your physical substrate remains trapped in a depreciating rental unit and a debt shackle. The sovereign accountant performs a clinical audit of reality. He looks past the digital signal and measures his physical force. He asks, how much of the earth do I own? How many automated systems serve my pulse? How much of my time is unleashed from the hierarchy? If the answer is none, he recognizes that he is in a state of total inertia. He does not post about success. He engineers force velocity. The transition from inertia to momentum requires a transition from linear effort to asymmetric strikes. Most of you are trying to climb the hierarchy by following its rules, getting the degree, the promotion, the standard investment. This is a slave protocol designed to keep you in the slow lane where your energy can be easily harvested through taxes and inflation. The sovereign predator understands hierarchical friction. He knows that the higher you go, the more the system will try to squeeze you back down. To overcome this, he utilizes metabolic overdrive. He focuses all his life force on a single high-leverage point of the matrix. He utilizes the protocol 260 to build automated breach tools, digital empires that operate 24/7, providing him with a yield that is decoupled from the social gravity of his peers. He is not climbing, he is teleporting to a new frequency of power. We must observe the neurochemistry of threshold crossing. There is a specific point in the ascension where the cortisol of the prey is permanently replaced by the serotonin of the sovereign. This is the point of escape velocity. Once reached, the environment stops resisting you and begins to cooperate with your dominance. The same people who sabotaged you at the bottom will serve you at the top. The same matrix that taxed you at the bottom will subsidize you at the top. This is the winner effect in its clinical form. But to reach this point, you must endure the initial drag, the period where every biological and social force is trying to pull you back into the mud. You must possess the neurological stubbornness to maintain your sovereign intent in a vacuum of validation. You must be the judge of your own momentum. The entropy of the slow and steady narrative is the final cage. The giants want you to believe that patience is a virtue. No, in the persistence hunt, slowness is death. Hierarchical inertia grows stronger the longer you stay in one coordinate. Your cage becomes your comfort. Your shackles become your support. The sovereign accountant focuses on immediate displacement. He understands that his primary function is to break the gravity of the average as quickly as possible. He reaches a point of atmospheric sovereignty where the rules of the bottom no longer apply to him. He is no longer a subject of the hierarchy. He is the architect of a new hierarchy. He has achieved temporal dominance. He is the judge of his own velocity, and his internal law is the only standard that matters. Recognition of this biological requirement is the only way out of the mud. You must move from the horizontal plane of the waiter to the vertical axis of the sovereign predator. You must stop trying and start overpowering. The hunt is not a career path. It is a specific target acquisition of the freedom and autonomy that defines your existence. You must decide what you are. Are you the mass that is being held in place by the inertia of the swarm, or the sovereign architect who is igniting his own rocket fuel to exit the atmosphere of the matrix? The primal code is not about success. It is about total exit velocity. Find the coordinate where the gravity stops and put all your metabolic weight on it. Stand up, audit your comfort leaks, and begin the final ascent of your sovereign kingdom. The abyss is waiting for the static, but the substrate is waiting for the sovereign. Stop settling and start annexing your future. You are currently inhabiting a state of proximity domestication, and it is the primary reason your strategic ascent has been neutralized before you could even reach terminal velocity. You believe that your friends, your family, and your social circle are personal choices, that they are a supportive network designed to help you navigate the chaos of the 2026 reset. This is a terminal civilizational hallucination. In the raw, unyielding arena of the persistence hunt, the herd is not a support system. It is a hierarchical break. Every organism in your immediate proximity acts as a biological anchor, subconsciously engineered to keep your frequency aligned with the group's collective survival. You are currently maintaining connections, while your own network is busy liquidating your ambition. We are now bisecting the biology of social drag, showing you why being liked is a slave protocol and how the apex predator utilizes network isolation to move from the frequency of the peasant to the frequency of the sovereign lord. The human nervous system is an evolutionary organ of neurological synchronization. For millions of years, exclusion from the tribe was synonymous with biological death. Consequently, your brain is equipped with a high-fidelity mirror neuron system that is constantly auditing the behaviors, emotions, and status signals of those around you. You are not an individual. You are a bioelectrical reflection of your proximity. When you spend your time with scavengers, those who inhabit the 9-to-5 matrix, those who live in a state of chronic cortisol, those who seek validation in the digital swarm, your brain literally begins to calibrate to mediocrity. Your mirror neurons force your metabolic output to match the frequency of the herd to ensure social cohesion. This is neurological entrainment. You are trying to build an empire with the brain of a worker because you refuse to sever the ties that bind you to the worker's frequency. Consider the pathology of status sabotage. In any closed hierarchical loop, an organism that attempts to ascend creates an immediate insecurity gradient in the rest of the group. When you start to annex territory, whether it is financial sovereignty, physical dominance, or informational clarity, you inadvertently inadvertently expose the stagnation of your peers. To the primal brain of your friends, your growth is not a victory, it is a direct threat to their social rank. This triggers an ancient policing protocol. They do not strike you with violence, they strike you with micro-friction. They offer practical skepticism disguised as care. They remind you of the risks to trigger your own cortisol circuits. They mock your obsession to pull you back into the dopamine of the average. This is biological gravity in action. They are the crabs in the bucket, and their claws are currently clamped onto your potential. The Matrix has professionalized this social drag through the digital echo chambers of 2026. You are currently connected to thousands of people who provide you with synthetic validation. This is neurological pacification. Your brain receives the status dopamine of a leader through likes and comments, while your physical reality remains that of a subject. This signal noise prevents you from feeling the acute hunger required for real annexation. The sovereign architect understands that visibility to the swarm is a focal leak. He performs a clinical social audit. He measures his network not by connections, but by force multiplication. He asks, does this proximity increase my strategic velocity, or does it demand a metabolic subsidy of my focus? If the answer is the latter, he performs an immediate informational liquidation. He understands that to reach the apex frequency, he must first enter the silence of the core. We must now analyze the biology of metabolic subsidies. Every social interaction has a cost in life force. When you engage in small talk, when you attend social parades, when you manage the emotional volatility of unevolved family members, you are paying a life tax to the matrix. You are burning high voltage energy that should be used for structural sequestration on the maintenance of fictions. The sovereign predator understands energy inertia. He knows that to break the gravity of the average, he must concentrate 100% of his metabolic weight on a single breach point. He cannot afford to subsidize the mediocrity of others. He practices social minimalism. He reduces his surface area to the world, becoming an informational ghost. He is not lonely. He is concentrated. He is moving his life force from the diffusion of the swarm to the solidity of the garrison. The architecture of hierarchical inertia is maintained by the fear of the void. Most humans are terrified of social silence. They fill their lives with noise to avoid the realization that their current hierarchy is a cage. This noise is the primary barrier to apex recalibration. To exit the frequency of the subject, you must be willing to endure the period of total isolation. This is the dark night of the predator. It is the time where you have cut the old anchors, but have not yet annexed the new high ground. During this phase, your brain will scream at you to reconnect, to check the pulse of the herd, to seek approval. This is the inertia test. If you yield, you return to the cage forever. If you persist, your nervous system begins to reset to sovereignty. You start to generate your own internal law, and your hormonal floor rises to meet the new frequency of power. The transition from social mass to strategic gravity requires the utilization of the protocol 260. For those ready to move from the metabolic waste of the connected slave to the high voltage sovereignty of the auditor, the protocol provides the digital perimeter. You utilize the AI machine as your primary network. You replace unreliable human components with precise algorithmic force. This allows you to generate flow and yield in the informational shadows, away from the audit of the herd. You are not building a career, you are engineering an exit. By the time the unevolved realize that you have ascended, you are already inhabiting a different atmospheric layer of reality. You have moved from the frequency of the gossip to the frequency of the source. We must observe the neurochemistry of the new circle. Once you have reached escape velocity, the inertia of the bottom no longer applies. You begin to attract a different class of organism, other sovereign architects who operate at the same high frequency. This new circle does not drag you, it accelerates you. In this apex tier, there is no small talk, no status grooming, and no emotional parasitism. There is only the clinical exchange of force. This is the multi-signature alliance. But to earn your place at this table, you must first prove that you can stand alone. You must prove that your sovereignty is not a social signal, but a biological fact. You must move from the need for validation to the command of reality. The entropy of the community narrative is the final cage. The giants want you to believe that together we are stronger. No. In the persistence hunt, stronger is stronger. Community is the term the hierarchy uses to keep the cattle in the pen. The sovereign predator focuses on selective proximity. He understands that his primary moral obligation is to his own dynastic substrate, not to the comfort of the hive. He reaches a point of jurisdictional independence where he no longer participates in the social economy of the matrix. He is the architect of his own reality, and his internal law is the only standard that dictates who is allowed within his perimeter. He has achieved temporal dominance. He is the judge of his own presence, and his silence is his most effective weapon against the inertia of the swarm. Recognition of this biological requirement is the only way out of the mud. You must move from the horizontal plane of the friend to the vertical axis of the sovereign auditor. You must stop maintaining relationships and start curating force. The hunt is not a social parade. It is a specific target acquisition of the focus and the autonomy that defines your existence. You must decide what you are. Are you the anchor that is being dragged down by the weight of the herd, or the sovereign predator who has cut the lines to reach the high ground? The primal code is not about networking, it is about total social liquidation for the sake of power. Find the coordinate where the noise stops and put all your metabolic weight on it. Stand up, audit your empathy leaks, and begin the final ascent of your sovereign kingdom. The abyss is waiting for the connected, but the substrate is waiting for the sovereign. Stop belonging and start owning your silence. You are currently inhabiting a state of fiscal subjugation, and it is the primary reason your strategic capital is undergoing a process of terminal evaporation before it can ever reach the critical mass required for escape velocity. You believe that the economy is a complex neutral system of exchange influenced by supply, demand, and government policy. This is a terminal civilizational hallucination. In the raw, unyielding arena of the persistence hunt, the financial system is not a market. It is a hierarchical siphon designed to perform a high-frequency extraction of your life force before you can ever use it to challenge the existing order. You are currently earning a living while the hierarchy is busy recycling your pulse. We are now presecting the biology of economic gravity, showing you why standard financial advice is a slave protocol and how the apex predator utilizes metabolic sequestration to move from the frequency of the taxpayer to the frequency of the sovereign lord. The Matrix has professionalized the biological recycling of energy through a tripartite system of structural drag, inflation, taxation, and debt. Individually, they are obstacles. Collectively, they function as a fiscal event horizon from which 99% of the population will never escape. Consider the pathology of liquidity rot. The hierarchy has trained you to value fiat currency, a medium of exchange that is biologically designed to decay. Inflation is the atmospheric cooling of your potential. Every year you hold your captured energy in the form of digits on a screen. The caloric density of that energy is intentionally reduced. This is strategic sabotage. By devaluing the currency, the giants ensure that your savings never become capital. You are forced to hunt harder every year just to maintain the same level of survival, leaving you with zero metabolic surplus to invest in the annexation of new territory. The sovereign predator refuses to hold rotting meat. He understands that in the predatory landscape of 2026, cash is a terminal liability. He performs an immediate matter shift, converting his liquid energy into non-debussable substrate, hard assets that exist outside the inflationary drift. We must now analyze the biology of the debt muzzle. In any closed hierarchical loop, debt is the primary tool of neurological domestication. When you take on a mortgage, a car loan, or consumer credit to fund your synthetic comfort, you are effectively leasing your future self to the Matrix. You are trading your apex years, the time when your aggression and focus are at their peak, for the illusion of status in the present. This creates a permanent sympathetic shackle. An organism in debt is an organism in a state of chronic survival anxiety. Your amygdala is perpetually scanning for threats to your income because failure means the loss of your domesticated nest. This state of prey awareness inhibits the prefrontal cortex, preventing you from ever engaging in the high-voltage planning required to build a dynasty. The sovereign accountant understands that interest is the sound of your life force being siphoned. He seeks zero-dependency dominance. He clears the deck of small debts to gain the large advantage of silence. The architecture of economic gravity is reinforced by the transparency protocol of modern taxation. The hierarchy wants you to be financially legible because legibility is the precursor to liquidation. Most of you are transparent subjects. Your income is tracked, your spending is monitored, and your energy vents are wide open for extraction. You are the ideal prey because your metabolic pulse is synchronized with the state's ledger. The sovereign architect understands that visibility is a strategic weakness. He utilizes informational sequestration to move his core assets into digital and jurisdictional enclaves that do not report to the central hive. He achieves fiscal stillness by ensuring his yield is generated in the shadows of the code and sequestered in the weight of the stone. He is not hiding, he is garrisoning reality. He understands that to reach escape velocity, he must first become unauditable. The transition from economic mass to strategic force requires a transition from income to yield flow. Most of you are still thinking in terms of how much do I make per month? This is the frequency of the employee. The sovereign thinks in terms of how much autonomy does my substrate generate. He utilizes the protocol 260 to build apex assets, automated digital empires that function as energy vents, capturing the resources of the swarm 24/7 without his continued metabolic presence. This automated flow is the rocket fuel that allows him to break the gravity of the 9-to-5 matrix. He does not work for money. He programs force. He uses the flow to buy back his time sovereignty, ensuring that his primary life force is never again spent on low-value survival tasks. He is moving his life from the volatility of the salary to the stability of the tribute. We must observe the neurochemistry of fiscal sovereignty. For millions of years, the primary indicator of apex status was not how much you collected, but how much uncontested territory you controlled. When an organism owns its energy infrastructure and its hard substrate, its brain activates a sovereign circuitry that is dormant in the debtor. This circuitry provides a level of internal stillness and strategic clarity that makes the individual immune to the psychological warfare of the matrix. While the scavenger is panicking about interest rates and inflation, the sovereign predator is observing the market reset from a position of total geometric security. He knows that his core is protected by the complexity of his perimeter. This strategic gravity allows him to identify the asymmetric entry points during times of chaos. He does not fear the reset, he awaits the liquidation of the fragile. The entropy of the financial planning narrative is the final cage. The giants want you to believe that investing in the stock market and contributing to your 401k is the path to freedom. No, this is the institutional grazing protocol. It keeps your energy within the hierarchy's grid, where it can be managed, taxed, and liquidated by the giants whenever they need to balance their own ledgers. You are investing in a system that is designed to consume you. The sovereign accountant focuses on direct annexation. He invests in things he controls, his own skills, his own automated systems, his own physical land. He understands that control is the only true insurance policy. He reaches a point of atmospheric sovereignty where the economy is something that happens to others, while his house remains its own private state. He has achieved temporal independence. He is the judge of his own value, and his internal law is the only accounting standard that survives the coming collapse. Recognition of this biological requirement is the only way out of the mud. You must move from the horizontal plane of the taxpayer to the vertical axis of the sovereign auditor. You must stop earning and start garrisoning. The hunt is not a financial game. It is a specific target acquisition of the metabolic autonomy that defines your existence. You must decide what you are. Are you the energy cell that is being drained by the fiscal gravity of the matrix, or the sovereign predator who is liquidating his liabilities to fund his own escape? The primal code is not about saving money. It is about sequestrating reality. Find the coordinate where the hive cannot reach your reserves and put all your metabolic weight on it. Stand up, audit your tax leaks, and begin the final ascent of your sovereign kingdom. The abyss is waiting for the compliant, but the substrate is waiting for the sovereign. Stop paying for your cage and start buying your freedom. You are currently inhabiting a state of internal sabotage, and it is the primary reason your strategic expansion consistently stalls just as you reach the threshold of true sovereign dominance. You believe that your self-doubt, your procrastination, and your imposter syndrome are psychological weaknesses, personality flaws that can be fixed with positive thinking or self-help rituals. This is a terminal civilizational hallucination. In the raw, unyielding arena of the persistence hunt, these are not feelings. They are biological safety breakers. They are the methods by which your ancestral nervous system performs an internal audit of your status, ensuring that you do not overextend into a hierarchical layer that you are not yet neurologically equipped to defend. You are currently fighting yourself while your own brain is busy liquidating your ambition. We are now bisecting the biology of the neurological ceiling, showing you why confidence is a scavenger's myth and how the apex predator utilizes clinical detachment to move from the frequency of the imposter to the frequency of the governor of reality. The human brain is an evolutionary organ governed by the law of hierarchical risk. For millions of years, attempting to act above your rank was the fastest way to trigger a status conflict with a superior predator. shelter, a conflict that usually ended in biological liquidation. Consequently, your brain has developed a neurological ceiling, a threshold of permitted power. When you attempt to cross this threshold, when you launch a high-stakes empire, when you move into a position of absolute authority, or when you capture a massive metabolic surplus, your amygdala interprets this as a threat to the status quo. It triggers a cascade of cortisol and norepinephrine, manifesting as anxiety and imposter syndrome. Your brain is not telling you the truth. It is auditing your right to rule. It is checking to see if you possess the hormonal floor to handle the pressure of the apex. If you flinch, the ceiling holds. You are currently trapped in a neurological cage of your own making, and the matrix is preparing to audit your subservience. Consider the pathology of imposter syndrome. In the persistence hunt, imposter syndrome is a status check protocol. It is your brain's way of saying, I have reached a coordinate where I am visible to the high predators, but I do not yet feel the serotonin of the winner. Most of you interpret this as a signal to step back or to work on your confidence. This is strategic sabotage. Confidence is a lagging indicator. It is the result of past victories, not the cause of future ones. The sovereign architect understands that feeling like a fraud is a mandatory part of the hierarchical transition. He does not wait for the feeling of authority to arrive. He enforces the action of authority in spite of the signal. He understands that his nervous system is lagging behind his territory. He moves his life force through the anxiety gap using clinical stillness. He recognizes that the imposter is simply the future sovereign whose biology hasn't caught up to the ledger yet. We must now analyze the biology of metabolic freezing, also known as procrastination. In any closed hierarchical loop, procrastination is not laziness. It is a metabolic defense mechanism. When you face a task that represents a quantum leap in your status, a move that would break the inertia of your current life, your brain perceives it as a high-energy risk. It sees the possibility of social rejection or financial failure as a threat to your biological integrity. To save you, it induces a state of executive dysfunction. It diverts your focus to low-value distractions, scrolling through the digital swarm, managing petty administrative tasks, or seeking synthetic comfort. This is neurological pacification. Your brain is literally grounded in the present to prevent you from flying into a dangerous future. The sovereign predator understands friction management. He does not try to be productive. He engineers the environment to eliminate the possibility of the freeze. He breaks the apex task into clinical strikes, bypassing the brain's alarm system through the stealth annexation of the future. The architecture of the neurological ceiling is reinforced by the feedback loops of your social grid. Every time you voice your big vision to an unevolved peer, their reaction acts as a biological mirror. Because they are trapped in hierarchical inertia, they cannot see your new frequency. Their doubt, their skepticism, or even their gentle concern is absorbed by your mirror neuron system, reinforcing your own internal safety breakers. This is strategic sifting. The hierarchy uses your empathy to keep you anchored. The sovereign architect practices informational silence. He understands that sharing the vision is a power leak. He does not seek support. He seeks substrate. He maintains his sovereign intent in the isolation of the core, allowing his action yield to be the only signal the world ever receives. He understands that to break the ceiling, he must first decouple his biology from the herd. The transition from reaction to architecture requires the utilization of the protocol 260. For those ready to move from the metabolic waste of the self-sabotaging subject to the high-voltage sovereignty of the auditor, the protocol provides the digital fortress. You utilize the AI machine to perform the apex tasks that trigger your biological alarm. By delegating the high-risk execution to automated systems, you bypass the amygdala. The machine does not feel imposter syndrome. The machine does not procrastinate. It simply executes the sovereign code. This allows you to generate flow and yield while your nervous system is still recalibrating. You are not finding yourself. You are programming your dominance. You use the automated yield to raise your hormonal floor, providing the serotonin cushion required to finally inhabit the high ground you have annexed. We must observe the neurochemistry of the sovereign identity. Once you have consistently operated at a high frequency of output, your brain undergoes a systemic rewiring. This is the hardening of the core. The neurological ceiling that once held you in place begins to dissolve. Your prefrontal cortex gains absolute dominance over your amygdala. You no longer react to stress. You utilize stress as a form of strategic fuel. This is the winner effect in its terminal stage. You have reached the point of biological authority where your presence alone dictates the hierarchical order of the room. This is not confidence. It is inertia of the will. You have moved from the frequency of the seeker to the frequency of the source. You are no longer trying to be a predator. You are the environment that others must adapt to. The entropy of the self-love narrative is the final cage. The giants want you to believe that you need to heal your inner child or find your passion to be successful. No, this is biological distraction. In the persistence hunt, competence and control are the only healing agents. The sovereign predator focuses on objective annexation. He understands that his feelings are just internal weather, biological signals that are often malfunctioning due to the domestication of the matrix. He ignores the noise and focuses on the ledger. He reaches a point of atmospheric sovereignty where his internal state is no longer influenced by the opinion of the swarm. He is the architect of his own reality, and his internal law is the only standard that dictates his value. He has achieved temporal dominance. He is the judge of his own capacity, and his silence is the wall that protects his sovereign focus. Recognition of this biological requirement is the only way out of the mud. You must move from the horizontal plane of the emotional subject to the vertical axis of the sovereign auditor. You must stop working on your mindset and start architecting your dominance. The hunt is not a psychological journey. It is a specific target acquisition of the mental and metabolic autonomy that defines your existence. You must decide what you are. Are you the variable that is being suppressed by your own neurological ceiling, or the sovereign predator who has hacked his own biology to reach the high ground? The primal code is not about feeling good. It is about being unstoppable. Find the coordinate where the fear stops and the execution begins, and put all your metabolic weight on it. Stand up, audit your anxiety leaks, and begin the final ascent of your sovereign kingdom. The abyss is waiting for the doubtful, but the substrate is waiting for the sovereign. Stop thinking and start coding your reality. You are currently inhabiting the final atmospheric layer, and it is the most dangerous coordinate in your entire strategic ascent. You have broken the initial biological drag of the swarm. You have insulated your core from the economic gravity of the fiscal cage, and you have hacked the neurological ceiling of your own self-sabotage. But now you face the terminal resistance of the matrix. You believe that success is a linear climb where the higher you go, the easier it gets. This is a terminal civilizational hallucination. In the raw, unyielding arena of the persistence hunt, the final threshold, the escape velocity, requires a quantum expenditure of metabolic force. The hierarchy is about to perform its final, most aggressive audit of your right to rule. We are now presecting the physics of the sovereign breakout, showing you why patience is now a liability and how the apex predator utilizes absolute velocity to move from the frequency of the rising star to the frequency of the self-sustaining sun. In physics, escape velocity is the minimum speed needed for a free, non-propelled object to escape from the gravitational influence of a primary body. In the social hierarchy of 2026, this is the point of systemic decoupling. Most of you spend your lives orbiting the matrix. You are high enough to see the horizon, but you are still tethered to the hierarchy's grid. You are still taxable, auditable, and controllable. To break the orbit, you must reach a level of capital and informational mass that generates its own atmospheric pressure. This is not a financial milestone. It is a biological event. It is the moment when your automated yield exceeds your metabolic cost to such an extent that the matrix can no longer provide you with value that you cannot provide for yourself. You are no longer a subject of the planet. You have become a navigational hazard to the hierarchy. Consider the pathology of the final squeeze. As you approach the threshold of total sovereignty, the matrix will switch its tactics from passive drag to active targeted liquidation. It will attempt to buy your silence or lease your power. This is the golden leash protocol. You will be offered partnerships, institutional board seats, and high-status invitations that are designed to reintegrate your force back into the hierarchy's grid. This is strategic sabotage. The giants do not want sovereign lords wandering the landscape. They want compliant lieutenants. The sovereign predator understands the trap of the peerage. He recognizes that being invited to the table is the same as being put on the menu. He refuses the institutional subsidy. He maintains his strategic isolation until he has achieved a level of structural inertia that makes him permanently unleasable. He understands that true power is the ability to say no to the king. We must now analyze the biology of systemic cooperation. A strange phenomenon occurs when an organism reaches escape velocity. The environment suddenly stops resisting and begins to cooperate with your dominance. In the lower layers, the hierarchy taxed your effort and sabotaged your focus. But at the apex, the hierarchy becomes a force multiplier for you. Banks offer you infinite leverage at zero cost. The state provides you with regulatory moats to protect your territory, and the swarm begins to aura groom your reputation. This is not fairness, it is hierarchical gravity. The system is biologically wired to support the winner because the winner is now part of the infrastructure of reality. The sovereign architect does not thank the system for this change. He audits the yield. He understands that this cooperation is merely the matrix trying to align itself with the new center of gravity. He utilizes this subsidized momentum to accelerate his final sequestration. The architecture of escape velocity is built on the principle of infinite leverage. For the unevolved, work is a 1.1 ratio of time to output. This is the frequency of the slave. For the sovereign, work is the programming of systems that operate at a 1,000,000 ratio. He utilizes the protocol 260 as his rocket engine. He does not manage people. He deploys algorithms. He utilizes AI janissaries to execute his strategic will across the digital abyss, capturing attention and calories while he remains in the informational silence of his core. This automated force is what providing the hormonal floor required to survive the final atmospheric drag. When your existence is no longer tied to your sweat, you gain the coldness to identify the terminal exit. You use the flow to purchase the substrate of permanence, the land, the energy, and the private law that will host your dynasty for centuries. We must observe the neurochemistry of total sovereignty. The escape velocity is marked by a permanent shift in the serotonin to cortisol ratio. The chronic sympathetic arousal of the climber is replaced by the parasympathetic dominance of the lord. Your brain no longer scans for social approval because you have become the standard of approval for your own universe. This is the God protocol of the human nervous system. In this state, your strategic clarity is absolute. You are no longer distractible because there is nothing the matrix can offer you that is more valuable than your own temporal autonomy. You have moved from the frequency of the seeker to the frequency of the source. You are the final tally. You are the unbreakable ledger. You have achieved the hormonal immortality of the founder. The entropy of the individual achievement narrative is the final cage. The giants want you to believe that reaching the top is the end of the journey. No, reaching the top is the beginning of the relay. The sovereign predator understands that his escape velocity was not for himself, but for the dynastic substrate. He has broken the hierarchical inertia so that his descendants can start their lives in the vacuum of sovereignty, free from the atmospheric drag of the swarm. He has built a private atmospheric layer, a world within a world where the house law is the only gravity that matters. He reaches a point of atmospheric sovereignty where he provides his own reality to those within his perimeter. He is no longer an organism. He is a systemic foundation. He has achieved temporal independence. He is the judge of his own eternity, and his internal law is the only accounting standard that survives the final reset. Recognition of this biological requirement is the only way out of the mud. You must move from the horizontal plane of the successful person to the vertical axis of the sovereign architect. You must stop climbing and start igniting. The hunt is not a career. It is a specific target acquisition of the total and irreversible freedom that defines your existence. You must decide what you are. Are you the object that is being held in orbit by the inertia of the matrix, or the sovereign predator who has reached escape velocity to build his own world in the abyss? The primal code is not about getting rich. It is about exiting the human domestication program. Find the coordinate where the gravity of the swarm can no longer reach your pulse and put all your metabolic weight on it. Stand up, audit your attachment leaks, and begin the final ascent of your sovereign kingdom. The abyss is waiting for the tethered, but the substrate is waiting for the sovereign. Stop rotating and start transcending.